Hello there, and welcome to the Cargo Bay, a Star Wars conversation podcast being transmitted to you from a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I am Brady C, here with my co-host as always,
Adam B. How's it going, BC? Are you still sleepy? We kind of slept through January.
Slept through pretty much all of it. Yeah, I'm good. I just had to use every amount of breath I had for that Cargo Bay intro. A little out of practice
Yeah,
on that.
yeah. And you've been smoking packs and packs of Virginia Slims because we found some old stock here in the bay.
Heavily, yeah, but still delicious. I love a good Virginia cut tobacco.
It tastes like the East Coast, baby.
Yeah. What a sweet cash crop.
Yeah, it's lovely to have a taste of home here in the Cargo Bay. And BC, going forward, are we going to be back on a weekly schedule, or
I think we are. We took our post-holiday sabbatical. We're back. We're up and running. We've got a schedule ahead. We've got guests. My goodness, we've got a guest today. Holy smokes, we're getting it together, baby.
We got a guest today. We got a guest next week. We got a guest the next week after that.
Oh.
It's crazy in here, VC. And also maybe some new projects. Maybe we're working on a little audio drama.
Very excited about the audio drama. You and I had, I think, probably one of the great story sessions of all time in the history of storytelling. Breaking story for what we're going to be doing with our audio drama. So very much excited about that.
Yeah,
looking forward to revealing more of it as we go forward with it.
And one last thing, BC, as far as hobby talk, our Star Wars trading card talk, we're still going to be doing that here and there, but right now we are priced out, baby. We cannot afford.
A quick hobby talk hit up at the top. There is going to be an Obi-Wan Kenobi series being released.
Yes.
All of the artists were just told that their work is not going to be included in it, which is fantastic. Way to go, Topps.
Yep.
But there was revealed another 2023 Chrome Topps card coming out that their artwork will be in. So I can't wait for them to tell us how much we're supposed to pay for that too.
Yeah, well, that's one type of Star Wars horror, the horrors of consumerism.
Oh, what, man, you're the king of segues.
Products.
What are we talking about today?
But today, VC, we're talking about a whole different type of Star Wars horror. That's, the horror of story.
Oh,
and narrative, and we've got a really spooky guest here in the Cargo Bay. BC, it's our buddy Mike from the Normies Like Us podcast. How you doing, Mike?
Hey guys, it's great to be here. First of all, now that the holidays are over and we have to face the horrors of everyday life, I figured it was appropriate to also face the horrors of a fictional, universe that we enjoy most of the time.
Yeah, well, thank you, because we made you do the work of picking our topic. That's how we do it.
Yeah, we make the guests do the heavy lifting. Is really how we function. So thank you.
It's like a restaurant. What do you wish to be served, right? And I wanted to be served a conversation on spooky stuff, I guess. But I appreciate you accepting my choice of topic, because it's an interesting one. I think, because there's not a lot out there, so it's
Yeah, it's a bit of a niche in the vast galaxy, but if people want to be served a dose of horror, there's plenty of it over at Normies Like Us. Y'all have done a lot of horror podcasting over there.
That's true. Every October, we do what we call Spooktober. We definitely invented that term. Nobody else has ever used that.
So original. It's nice.
Especially nobody from Wisconsin, with large YouTube presences who have also talked about Star Wars before. But no, so we do Spooktober every October, where we cover either franchises or individual movies, or we'll have each host pick something. But we talk a lot of horror. We've done all of Hellraiser, all of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, all of we've done Jason, Freddy, pretty much all the big hitters. A lot of niche stuff too. Barbarian was a great one from last year. But we like horror over on Normies Like Us, as we also do Star Wars. And Andor kind of started before, then we did Spooktober, and then Andor finished, and it made me think, here's a whole genre film, or a genre series, political thriller. Why is there no horror in Star Wars, really? And that's what kind of set me off, is we have a universe for genre. We can do Westerns, but what would a horror thing look like? And that's kind of where it all started.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that. But before we do, I did want to see Mike, because, a Star Wars fan, you have your Junk Squadron patch on cam right now. We flew in the the legendary squadron, Junk Squadron. What are you doing with Star Wars right now? Are you totally burnt on it? Are you still in the afterglow of Andor? Are you keeping up with Bad Batch? Do you care about Mando season 3? These are the things I want to know.
That's a good question. That's a good question. And yeah, Normies Like Us is one accolade, but really Junk Squadron is the bigger one, defeating the Cavern Angels in the legendary scrimmage of 2020 or whatever.
That will be mentioned at my funeral, I hope.
Oh yeah, it's on my headstone. I've already got it lasered engraved. So Star Wars now, I really am basking kind of in the afterglow of Andor, because that was a nice change of pace. It was wonderful. Obi-Wan is my favorite character, but I was a little bummed out by some of that. I did watch the what's the new animated series? Not the Bad Batch. My friends like the Bad Batch, but the ones short stories, and they had the
Tales of the Jedi.
Tales of the Jedi, and I really enjoyed the Dooku arc of that. Yeah. That's right. So that was something that was very cool. Correct.
It's a big justice for Dooku pod here. We're I think he might have had some good ideas. Essentially, is what we feel.
See, here in the cargo bay, we might have some issues with how the Jedi handle things at the end of their reign.
Yeah, the more we sit on the prequels, the more we realize that organization was not right. I think.
I would like to.
They're horrific.
Yeah,
I would like to shoehorn in here an endorsement for Star Wars Shatterpoint, the Mace Windu novel that came out right after Episode 2. My new favorite Star Wars novel, period. And also, if that was the trajectory that the Jedi went forward on, would have less to blame them for. That book is really about Mace Windu being critical of the Jedi and grappling with the realities of war on like a small scale guerrilla front, and it's really good. And the Jedi would have been much cooler if their philosophies continued from that point forward. But anyway, just a recommendation to any listeners out there: give a listen to that audiobook. It's pretty good.
Solid rec. I've picked up the Marvel Unlimited app for my newly purchased iPad. I've been hammering some Star Wars comics on that. Quality's kind of up and down. Yeah. I'm reading through like the main Star Wars line right now. It's pretty meh. But there are some good issues. But it's kind of like you take what you get. But I'm going to be spinning off into the Vader series that they've got. I think we're going to talk about some Vader comics at some point. But that has been very fun. I do want to just touch on Bad Batch real quick. I just kind of like don't care.
Yeah, I'm always an episode behind. I will say I liked Episode 3 quite a bit, which was a Crosshair.
That one was. I think that's the best one so far.
Paulette and I really enjoyed that one. It's kind of heavy, but I haven't seen the newest episode yet. I'm kind of on an I don't care that much feeling with it too, but I'll watch it. I'll catch it eventually. And I'm sure when Mando does come around, I'll be excited for that too. I'm not trailer, like, dying for it, but
yeah, we had the trailer. The new trailer came out recently. Any standout moments from the trailer that got you hyped for some Mando season 3?
There were moments that stood out that didn't make me hyped.
What are those?
Just mostly the like Grogu coming out of a cave awkwardly and force pushing something over, like weaponized Grogu. I'm over Grogu. I think they really missed an opportunity to cleanly exit that arc.
I would 100% agree with that. And over the holidays, I'm advocating for Gremlins being the best Christmas movie. We're done with Die Hard. That meta's over. We're Gremlins, and that's the original Grogu. Grogu who? No, Gizmo. So like I'm over it too. But I'm excited for more Mando. We just covered The Last of Us first 2 episodes of Normies Like Us. We love some Pedro Pascal.
Yep.
So I'm excited for that at least. Mando's probably what's on the horizon that I'm most looking forward to. Although Sasha Banks will not be joining us.
What? I have not heard about this. All right.
A minor character in 2 episodes will not return.
Yeah, a few
Oh no!
I'm just a wrestling fan, so it's okay.
Yeah, there are a lot of sad card collectors out there, or happy because they already got their Sasha Banks Star Wars autos, and
going up in value now. Yeah,
skyrocketing. Yeah, shout out to your Last of Us. I listened to that the other day. I have been thoroughly enjoying some Pedro Pascal action on HBO. I like having an HBO Sunday night thing, and Last of Us is like the last 2 weeks has been like the perfect like Sunday night. Put on Last of Us, have some popcorn. Great watch. Highly enjoyed.
It's almost more exciting than House of the Dragon, which was great, but there's something about it. They're catching lightning in a bottle, maybe. So yeah, good on them.
And
it's a little spooky.
Well,
it is.
It's been surprising to watch something that has, I guess because Druckmann is at the head and the games are his babies, but it's nice to see something adapt a video game and be like, hey, you know what worked really well? Exactly what was already in the game. Let's just take some of those moments one-to-one. I'm enjoying the show so far. I was really disappointed in the end of episode 2. Really weirded me out. There was some sexualized violence that was not there in the original plot that I thought was really poorly handled and unnecessary. But,
You're talking about one of the most disturbing images ever captured on film with the most beautiful kiss of all time.
Yeah,
the mushroom makeout.
Sorry for spoilers. There's a little fungal kiss out there, but I just thought it was really, it took away agency from a strong character that I love. So I don't know. That was really weird choice, but other than that, I've been enjoying the show a lot.
Yeah, that was a weird choice indeed, but it did have shades of Alien. Like, here's something that wants to enter your mouth forcibly, and that's scary.
Yeah, here's something that wants to violate you. I just think there's a million ways to showcase that zombie horror without, taking one of the strongest female characters in the franchise and being like, let's take your self-sacrifice and instead make it about sexualized violence against you.
I'm not a fan of that. And again, there's good and bad. Horror is one of those genres where there's like good and bad to it. Like there's proper use of tropes and themes, and then there's exploitative use of tropes and themes, unfortunately. So generally, I lean into the good horror, right? I'm a big horror fan.
Yeah.
And, we would presume that if we're going to do a Star Wars horror, it would be in the good vein and non-exploitative. But I want to ask you guys, like, do you like horror as a genre? Like, what's kind of your history with it? Start with Adam, but like, where you guys land on this? Because I'm all about it.
Yeah, I'm a horror fan in general. I would say it's hard for me to go see a horror movie because I don't like torture porn. I don't like gore, and of course, we grew up in an era where torture porn kind of became like, like the head of what horror was for a while. So I don't love watching that. If I can watch how the special effect is done, I get over it. I just kind of feel pain when I see pain. But mostly I like creature horror and sci-fi horror. We're going to talk some about native horror elements in Star Wars or things that already exist. And most of those are creature horror things. Alien is my favorite movie of all time. The Thing is in my top 5 probably.
Yeah.
So I like some sci-fi and I like some monsters. But yeah, overall, I like a good scary movie. I can't think of the last one I saw that I really disliked. And a big fan of The Ring, I would say, was a formative.
Oh, yeah.
The Ring and Psycho growing up, those are big for me.
Nice.
Nice.
UBC.
I don't seek out horror. I was telling you before we started recording that I got spooked as a child. Really turned me off of the horror experience. Like, it just wasn't something that like I was like, I love being terrified. This is great. I'm like, I'm terrified. I'm gonna go somewhere else.
Right.
Didn't really embrace it. Like for me, I think Scream was probably the first like memory of a horror movie where it's like, oh, Drew Barrymore, I remember you from stuff. And then it was like, oh, you're getting murdered in the first part of this movie, and all my older cousins are watching it and enjoying it. I'm like, I gotta go. I'll be behind that couch while you guys are watching. I gotta go do behind the couch things. So yeah, I mean, just like it was just never really like my thing. That being said, I mean, like I grew into having sort of a refined palette for things that I do, like Alien, The Thing, psychological horror, that sort of stuff. I don't do like the gross out violence, torture porn stuff. That's not really for me. I do like some kind of creature horror, but the psychological horror is sort of, I can get into those, but I don't really react well to like, we're gonna jump scare you or we're gonna show gratuitous violence as part of something.
Can I ask,
right?
Because there's a line for me where if it's too over the top, I start to love it again. Like the recent Evil Dead reboot is something that sticks in my mind as being just silly enough that like every time there's blood spraying around, I'm like, yeah.
I mean, like Drag Me to Hell crosses that, like Sam Raimi, crosses that line for me where it's like I loved Drag Me to Hell, like it was. It's right there in the title. It's exactly what I want. Anytime where I feel like I'm going through the horror to beyond to like the laugh of it too, where you can take me to the absurd point of the violence or the fear or whatever that is. I like that because once we're going into the land of like the absurd, that's also like my sweet spot too. Anything that feels like it's so grounded in reality, I'm a little less into. But when you can really play into like, oh, we're gonna go beyond, that's when I start to engage in like, oh, this is fun, it's entertaining, it's creative in a way that is taking a turn that maybe I didn't expect.
Yeah, Mike, what's your favorite horrors? Your favorite horrors.
Who are your favorite horrors?
Yes.
Who are your favorite
house
horrors?
in New Orleans.
What are your favorite hordes?
My favorite hordes, yeah. So I guess I'm with you both on the fact that like I'm not into the torture porn or like even some of kind of the body horror stuff, except for The Thing. But like some Cronenberg stuff is tough. Like his son just did Infinity Pool. I'm intrigued by that with Mia Goth and Alexander Skarsgård, but it seems like it's going to be a hard watch. And anything that, feels legitimately painful or gross, like too much gore, like the Hellraiser series, that whole kind of vibe, chains and hooks and stuff like that's not really my thing. I can respect the first movie, but my favorite horror movie I like slashers a lot. So like Texas Chainsaw, the Friday the 13th slashers was always our thing. So and Texas Chainsaw 2 is like a black comedy. So you kind of get both in that franchise. But I would say those are my favorites. Alien is obviously great, and psychological stuff like Nope, that's like a psychological horror.
I still haven't seen that yet.
I really liked Nope.
That's probably number one on things I should watch.
Yeah, Nope is it's in my top 5 movies of last year, along with Barbarian, both strong kind of horror movies and a little bit of sci-fi there. So I would highly recommend it. But yeah, the less gory and the stuff that leans towards the campiness that BC was talking about, once we can kind of laugh at it to a degree, like if it's over the top, spooky stuff like The Ring. I also like, Japanese horror, things like that. So kind of runs the gamut, but nothing like Eli Roth's work doesn't speak to me. The Green Inferno, miss me with all that. But, Texas Chainsaw, that's my favorite horror movie of all time, the original, Tobe Hooper. So,
also,
that's probably my favorite double feature, actually, because then you get a funny one after with Dennis Hopper.
Oh, I still haven't seen Texas Chainsaw all the way through, Mike. I have to finish it. What I've seen is like, I wish I could describe films as genres based on like color tone. And I love that kind of, 70s, early 80s horror is all kind of yellow. It makes things scarier to me. Like, I have Alien on VHS because I think it's scarier on, like lower definition kind of, interlaced with some fuzz and very yellowed. But that's also one of the reasons I love Star Wars is there's this similar kind of like, there's kind of a gloomy vibe about the used future in the original Star Wars movie, at least on Tatooine. So I don't know. I think this is cool because I think the universe of horror and the universe of Star Wars should play pretty well together.
Yes.
I wanted to give a general spiel about kind of Star Wars horror in the expanded universe. We have tons of video games, comic books, and movies, but truly this is a very underexplored, genre. Kind of the biggest thing that exists out there that is just horror, aside from like a few comic book runs, There is a novel called Death Troopers. And is that Joe Schreiber? Anyway, Death Troopers is really an earnest attempt at like, we're gonna make a horror novel, and there is a prequel that comes out a year later called Red Harvest, based on Blue Harvest being the fake title of Return of the Jedi, and that is the prequel at which the zombie virus is developed at a Sith academy. I have not read that one. I have read the first one. And I wanted to play a clip for everybody from this first book, just so you can see how kind of hard they lean into this horror genre. Feel free to plug your ears if it gets a little too nasty for you, friends. Here we go.
Hop behind the couch if you need to, yeah.
I will.
Minor spoilers ahead for Death Troopers.
Unwrap it at least, so I can see it. I'll show you. I need to keep the pressure on the... It's coming through me! Kale, don't. He sat up and grabbed the bloody tourniquets from his calf, ripping them off in layers. Zahara tried to stop him, and he shoved her back without so much as a backward glance, intent on peeling away the canvas strips that she'd torn from her own jacket. The last of them fell away in a sodden red heap. See? Kale's face was flushed with horrified triumph. I told you! Zahara stared at it. There was a fist-sized chunk of flesh missing from the meaty part of his lower leg, the exposed shin bone gleaming visibly through a web of torn muscle and viscera. The puckered flesh around the wound had gone a bruised, gangrenous gray. She found herself watching in fascinated horror as that same gray hue began to reach up his leg, past his knee to his thigh, causing it to pulsate visibly with gelatinous vitality. It was like a hand sliding up underneath his skin, reaching eagerly upward toward his torso. Get rid of it! Kale shrieked, his own voice high and reedy, slapping at himself as his voice joined those of the screamers inside the shaft. Cut it out! Get rid of it!
All right.
Whoa.
All right.
Ooh.
So, Death Troopers is a book that I enjoy, and I'm going to give a big spoiler. Mike, you're probably not going to read this, right? Am I incorrect? May I spoil something for you?
Oh, yeah, please.
Okay,
please.
hit that skip button, about 15 seconds. Horror movie, or horror novel, in the middle of it, Han Solo shows up.
What?
Which I've got to say is very stupid and makes the whole thing way more enjoyable.
It's the equivalent of Bruce Campbell showing up.
Yeah, just a little, well, here
Out
we
of
are
nowhere.
halfway through the... But the general plot of Death Troopers is that a prisoner transport comes across a derelict Star Destroyer with nobody inside, but in pristine condition. And then it's just kind of a zombie, novel from there.
Yeah.
But my point in playing that clip is they do lean into the genre. It is gross. It is depressing. It is aside from spoilers said, mostly a pretty straightforward, brutal zombie novel, and it's all right. The audio production is pretty good on the audiobook too. But that is what we have as the kind of the most in genre thing. One other thing I wanted to mention, there's a list on StarWars.com of different comic book runs and whatnot. But something I did not know existed is the Star Wars Galaxy of Fear series, which came out in the 90s to be like a Goosebumps series for kids. There are 12 books, which had no idea. Might explore some of those later.
They were going to try to ride that R.L. Stein train.
Yeah.
Stein.
But if it didn't reach me, the target audience, I can't imagine they sold tons and tons of those. And finally, the last thing I'll say is currently the High Republic is an ongoing series, and while that's not a horror series, it does have strong horror elements mixed into some of the later novels. So that's kind of where we are as a state of the expanded universe. It's just kind of smatterings of stuff here and there.
Gotcha. Yeah, that Death Troopers. I mean, the combination of the words gelatinous and viscera.
Yeah.
Well done.
Yeah.
But it's... Go ahead.
There's some long paragraphs like that throughout the book. I had to skip through some of them at various points.
The descriptive prose of, yeah. It's interesting because I forgot to mention that zombie stuff was a big one for me. Like George Romero, like the original Dawn of the Dead is probably my second favorite horror movie of all time, and that one leans into camp too. So like the zombie stuff I'm very familiar with, and unfortunately right now it feels like a played out genre. The Last of Us is making it fresh somehow.
Yeah.
But it has been played out, but it makes sense that you do that in space, like yeah,
and
it's
this
a good
came
starting
out
point.
right when it was being played out. This is when
Right, The Walking Dead and that. Yeah.
When you couldn't go into a Walmart without seeing like 70 zombie related items.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's where we're at, I guess. And I appreciate the spiel because I hadn't known about the Death Troopers. I did during my research, like find out about Galaxy of Fear, but that missed me as well. And I feel like I would have been the target demographic because I was reading Goosebumps. So
yeah,
seems like they have a couple interesting interesting stories there. There's 12 books. They're exploring some stuff, like cyborg soldiers and stuff. Like there's maybe something there, but I haven't read them, so I can't really speak to that. But I would be intrigued to maybe work together to say what could you do with horror in this universe that's not zombies. I guess
there's another book on that Star Wars list about Han Solo and Lando dealing with droids that can manipulate organic flesh, so they're kind of forcing themselves. They're like crazy cyborg robot grossies. But anyway, that was on the list. That came out in 2018. I've never heard of it. So
gotcha.
Yeah, but I did want to ask, seeing as there are some, there's some horror elements in Star Wars for sure. I wanted to ask what y'all's favorite moments of horror were in the Star Wars films as they are.
Well, as the guest, I want to steal the lowest hanging fruit, and I think as a youth, the Wampa cave scene was pretty spooky for me when I was a child. Like Luke's vulnerable, hanging upside down, no lightsaber. There's this monster, and even in the remastered where we get to see more of it, that's probably the only positive change of the remastered editions. It's more Wampa, but yeah, that was a scary scene for me. How about y'all?
Wampa, definitely a standout. For me, the scariest thing as a child was Luke on Dagobah having his Darth Vader encounter.
Yeah.
Like when he cuts off the helmet and sees his own face in there, like that freaked me out because I had no idea what was going on. Yeah, I just remember thinking like he's not ready to fight Darth Vader, and obviously he wasn't. But like that, and it plays into that like psychological horror of what it is that he's facing. And I like as a kid, I had no concept of what was occurring. I was like, oh, he's fighting Darth Vader. Oh, he beat him. Oh, his head's in the helmet. What's happening? And then it's like, oh. And then I feel like my parents had to be like, so that was all like in his mind. That didn't happen. I was like, okay, good, because that can't happen to Luke Skywalker right now. That's not where this hero is going. But that always freaked me out as a youth, was that particular encounter.
Yeah, that's awesome to think about. That was definitely scarier to me as a child. Than it would be with like if I would have seen it 5 years later, I would have understood what was happening. But similarly, It was just kind of like, what is this?
Oh my god!
Yeah. If I may, in hindsight, watching it now as a fully grown adult is more scary because you realize that it's about grappling with what you may become one day, and that's also terrifying.
There's layers. There's layers there. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
the existential dread.
I want to shout out the Dianoga sequence. Just because as a concept, things that you can't fully see under the water really bothers me. And also I just think that's a great sequence that could easily be in a horror movie. Feels a little bit like something out of Alien 3 to me. I don't know.
Yeah. No, that definitely stands out. But there's not, I don't know, there's not a ton of other explicitly spooky stuff.
We got Dark Ray. We got my favorite in the new trilogy, which is
Spooky Mirror,
which is Dark Luke. We have Kylo's memory of Luke about to murder him. We've got some faces that Lord of the Rings style turn creepy at various points in the movie. Yeah, I guess if you're really young, Rapthars might be an issue. We've got you could argue that the space worm cave sequence in Empire is
the Rancor, I guess.
Palpatine and Rise of Skywalker got them fingies that haven't fully grown.
Yeah, that's pretty creepy.
That's a little Texas Chainsaw Grandpa, yeah.
Yeah.
It really scared me when I realized they could make a third Death Star.
I've got a couple pulls from the animated stuff. So I got some
nice.
Clone Wars.
Cool.
I mean, again, this is cartoons for children, so I mean, we're not talking super scary, but anything with the Night Sisters. I mean, there's an actual horde of Night Sister zombies that are like culled up to fight against Grievous as Daka and Mother Talzin are like torturing Dooku with a voodoo doll.
Yeah.
That's a thing that happens in Clone Wars, which is pretty sweet. So I mean they literally raise an army of zombies in that, probably because of The Walking Dead. I don't know. There's also an episode on I want to say it's Geonosis. Let me just double check here, where
it is. Yeah,
it's called The Brain Invaders.
Yeah.
So they're like these worm creatures that like infect the brains of the clones, and I think Barriss Offee, they get like infected with these little critters, and Ahsoka has to like figure out how to get them out. But I mean those are sort of like kind of horror elements that creep into some of the Clone War stuff. There's a few more episodes that have like, I mean, they're just it's a bigger sandbox, I felt like, that Clone Wars can play in, just because they've got so many episodes. So they do veer into some of that kind of weirder stuff. I don't really count the Mortis arc kind of in terms of like the psychological stuff, or like Anakin dealing with like the embodiment of the light and the dark side. Some of that plays into kind of psychological horror too, but there's some good stuff in the cartoons.
Those brain worms, I think they're different, but in the Mace Windu book, they encounter a parasitic worm in the jungle that grows inside of you and then burrows out through your skull. So that was the thing. I also, before I forget, video games. There's horror stuff in tons of video games, Star Wars video games. Mysteries of the Sith has some horror stuff in there. Fallen Order, there's a great moment where you're abducted, like you're in Bloodborne, and go to a creepy, like arena. So I don't know. There's a lot in video games, but I always kind of rule out video games when we're talking, because I would talk about them forever, and I don't feel like a lot of people care. So
right.
And also Darth Vader hallway scene, Rogue One guys, Bor Gullet, Rogue One guys. These are horror things.
Bor Gullet, hello.
I mean, how many articles did you see after Rogue One came out that were like, Star Wars now has a horror scene because Darth Vader's coming down the hall?
Okay.
I think I probably said that. I was really hyped on it when it came out. I was like,
I got amped about the scene, but I don't know. Probably if you're younger, maybe it does skew more towards horror. But I was just like, this is sick. It's so awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
But having the familiarity with Darth Vader, I mean, Darth Vader as a child. I mean, I always go back to where I encountered this first. Like my experience with Darth Vader as a child was like, oh, that's scary, right? Like the figure, like the design of him cuts like a pretty scary image.
Yeah.
And so seeing him whenever it happened in Empire, when Luke is facing him in his cave of evil, whatever, is like, oh, that's just like horror. Like that's a monster standing there. So I think he does embody that fairly well. But the more I mean, now that we've got the prequels and we've built out the history of Anakin Skywalker,
we realize how tactically stupid Darth Vader
is.
Very
petty.
Yeah, it takes away from some of the mystique and some of the aura by like going into episodes 1, 2, and 3 and having all of that, mythology built out. But as like a standalone, those original trilogies, I think he is like creature horror in his own way. But it feels like over time it is definitely softened.
Well, that is a mistake that a lot of horror franchises make, is we always have to do Texas Chainsaw, the beginning. What if we explain why the threat is the way it is? And those movies always lessen kind of the impact of the villain overall, or the character, I think. So, you turned her against me. my master, it's like, okay. As much as I love that scene, but
Yeah, I mean, that was my biggest struggle with the prequels growing up, was like, this changes how I see Darth Vader. Like,
Yeah.
it's really hard for me to reconcile these two things. And over time and over many episodes of the Clone Wars and now the Obi-Wan series, like, I've started to pair them together as one and the same. But yeah, it was like, it's hard. Darth Vader isn't nearly as scary after watching Anakin cry.
No, but I like how petty he can be to like,
Yeah.
I'm going to drag you through fire, like,
Yeah.
Yeah, there was
that is very Anakin of him, yeah, and it's kind of spooky. But yeah, I guess like that Darth Vader scene, like you're saying, that's like kind of a slasher thing, right? And I was just thinking of, generally, if we're gonna speculate here, like, yeah, what are the key genres? Not to explore them all, but it's like there's the possession. Could there be a Sith spirit possessing someone? Slasher could be anything. A body horror, space worm, right? All that stuff. Haunted house could be fun. You find a Sith temple, creature features, anything, and then little tiny terrors like gremlins or Jawas or something. But there's many genres that you could approach. So I say open up the pit, the Rancor pit. Where can we go that we have not been before? Any ideas here?
I feel like to a degree they have explored like the haunted house with some of the Jedi temple stuff, where it's like you've got to go face your own cave of in Rebels or Clone Wars. I think they do that fairly effectively. I think just thinking about the Thing being one of my favorite things is like, oh, that would be interesting if you did sort of like a contained thing where there is like, is the dark side of the Force like influencing these characters in some way as a way to like play off of that. I'm always like, let's just reference something else and build off of that. I think that would be interesting. The other one that I jotted down my two quick notes, and then like Wampa Universal Monster movie.
Yes. Oh,
I think would be something I would want to do as well. I mean, that's like old school horror and it's not as scary, but I think if you did that sort of style, like, I don't know if you saw, did you watch the Werewolf by Night, the Marvel special? I loved that. I thought that was to me that was like pitched at the perfect level of like, entertainment and camp and playing with some of the horror themes. I think obviously they can do that. They'll play with that in the Marvel universe. I think it'd be fun to do something like that in Star Wars, since they're just like, we'll build out content on the platform. It's like, loosen the reins a little bit, have a little bit of fun, do something like that with like the Wampa as a Universal style monster.
Yeah, I could see a Revenant vibe, like man versus nature. Random pilot, doesn't even need to be a Jedi or a fighter. Just random person crashes on Hoth, and then, oh geez, there's a Wampa after me. Like, yeah, that's a good thing right there.
There's an abandoned rebel base. This is now New Republic era.
Yeah,
that'd be dope.
And it's overrun. Yeah, we find
there's like you have other characters because there's like a medical droid that's left or something.
Oh, that's fun. You get a little exposition. It's 50% functioning, and we learn to like it, and then it gets destroyed, sadly, right near the third act, that kind of stuff,
You bring in more of the cold than the Thing does, even. Like, make it more like the Thing, the video game, where it's constantly, trying not to die from the cold and the Wampa.
Yeah.
And then
there's that.
The end of it is you kill the Wampa and you sleep in the Wampa safe and sound.
Yeah.
Cut it open and you're safe until the rescue arrives.
You turn on the rescue beacon, defeat the Wampa, and then we cut, and you don't know if rescue ever comes. But for that moment, he or she, they is the victor. And that's cool. I like that concept. All right, so we have the Wampa kind of movie. I want to lean to the droid side now. I have a pitch, but I want to ask you guys if you've heard about Mr. Bones. Do you know who Mr. Bones is in the extended universe?
No.
I don't think I know Mr. Bones.
So this is another thing that kind of made me think about Star Wars horror years ago when I learned about it. But Mr. Bones is a B-1 battle droid that was built by Snap Wexley. Everyone remembers Snap Wexley, right?
Yeah, so the guy who I was like, why does this guy have lines?
Because he was in
Greg Grunberg.
J.J. Abrams.
Greg Grunberg's one of our great actors.
Okay. So he, as a youth, rebuilds a B-1 battle droid that was found. and he builds it crazily. He puts like a cybernetic eye on it. He puts animal bones on it. He sharpens its nose and gives it like blades. And
Hell yeah.
Mr. Bones is like his little buddy and protects their family. He even ends up fighting the Empire at one point, but his weird programming, he really likes when he gets to kill to protect his masters. Like, he takes joy in it. And I'm like, okay, Mr.
Like
Bones.
HK, hell yeah.
And then at one point, Poe Dameron uploads the consciousness of Mr. Bones because he gets destroyed, but they save his brain into another battle droid. And he's like surrounded, and then this droid wakes up and just slaughters everybody surrounding him and says, "Oh, I'm Mr. Bones." And Poe Dameron's like, "What have I done? What is this thing?" So
that's
I
awesome.
don't know.
What a great
painted red.
I feel like there are so many
yeah.
of these droid stories are like the cream of the crop of the Star Wars expanded universe. Like IG-88, you know, there being multiple 88s, and one of them like infiltrates the Death Star computer and all this stuff. And IG-88 was always creepy as hell and Shadows of the Empire to me. So yeah, I think that's a good place to go, is a horror movie about a droid, you know.
Terminator.
Yeah, Terminator is exactly the thought. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's your premise. But yeah, Mr. Bones, look him up. He's red. He's painted red. It's pretty wild that exists. But he's in the Lego Star Wars game. They made a reference to him, so you can play as Mr. Bones.
That's
so there you go. And everyone's
hell.
favorite childhood game. Yeah.
I wanted to ask y'all. I haven't seen Midsummer. I never saw it, but I wanted to pitch a movie, even though I haven't seen Midsummer. Having only seen the trailer for Midsummer, I want one with a similar tonality about the Jedi Temple and about a, you know, child in the Jedi Temple whose master is evil as fuck, you know, and it's kind of their experience inside of this cult until they discover that their master is truly horrific in whatever way that leads to.
That is great.
Yeah, I mean, child indoctrination is pretty terrifying to begin with, and that's like the low hanging fruit for the Jedi. They love that sort of stuff.
Love it.
They are all about it.
And to have
your children, the younger the better.
Youth.
Yeah,
they're like, oh, I'm so excited to go to Jedi camp, and then slowly like, oh, this is not what I expected.
Or it's not the real Jedi camp. It's like a Force user who comes and abducts children, like.
Oh
like,
my God!
From the Jedi Council. Like,
now, Adam, I think
better.
I think maybe we should save that or incorporate that idea into those smuggled lightsabers that we've got hanging at the end of that drama that we're outlining right now.
Yeah.
I like
bad.
I like that idea because that is, I mean, that's horror. To me, is like that. There's someone presenting as a Jedi who are just abducting children and then training an army of like
Kumail Nanjiani was evil.
Yeah.
Hey. No, that's wild. Yeah, just like for whatever ends to have an army of trained children soldiers and just going around the galaxy. My academy, your child is gifted. Like, oh my God, that's nuts.
Yeah, there's
children soldiers, like they don't even have to be force sensitive. He just has to convince the parents that they're special, and then give them like a lightsaber, you know, and like I've got a trained army of, they may not be Jedis, but they'll still slice you in half with a lightsaber.
Yeah.
The average frontier town stands no chance.
Yeah.
You know.
The child army rolls into town and it's just like,
children of the corn
going on. Yeah.
Hey. No adults allowed.
The last kind of general concept I have is just you know, and I feel like this is the lowest hanging fruit, is master and apprentice arrive on a planet. Master dies because there's something evil on the planet, thus the apprentice is left alone. You know, very like what was that Will Smith and his son movie that everybody hated so much, After Earth?
After Earth, yeah.
Did either of y'all see that?
No,
I didn't see After Earth.
My friend convinced me to watch it. I was like, "Are you serious? This is what we're doing this afternoon. We're gonna watch this." And he was like, "Yes." And this was many years ago, but I was like, "I love it. I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it was really good. But I have bad taste, so
No.
And also, Will Smith
Smash.
smashed someone. He slapped someone. So
Yeah, Will slap.
I don't watch his movies anymore.
He will. No. I don't watch any of his stuff, but I have a couple concepts to maybe pitch out then.
Yes,
please do.
As I was getting ready and I was thinking of the Tiny Terrors, I was like, oh, I shared with you, Adam, a short film called The Ewok Hunt. It's not good, but it takes place on Endor.
Sorry if you made it. It's fine. It's not poorly made.
Yeah.
It's just stretched out. It's 30 seconds turned into 5 minutes.
Yeah, but it's the concept. It's like oh, the Ewoks are getting them, but the whole planet kind of has a presence. It's like the planet, the moon itself is angry with the stormtroopers for being there. So it's not just the Ewoks. There's a little bit more going on, but it results in a Ewok jump scare, and everything's filmed like a found footage stormtrooper helmet cam.
Fun.
So I was like, okay, Tiny Terror Ewok. But then when I was getting ready, I'm looking at the Jawas and the Junk Squadron patch. I'm like, you know what? What if a droid that we like is slightly malfunctioning, traversing the Tatooine desert, and they're just following him, trying to like pick parts off, and it's just a robot is the protagonist, and the Jawas are slowly trying to just wait for it, the moment, to strike.
I love it. I love the Jawas as the villains and our droids as the heroes.
Yeah.
Two little astromechs. Just trying to get through.
Man. A BB-8, a BB unit, and an R2 unit, and they're just trying their best.
And maybe like one of them is injured, like broken, the other one's towing them around. It's very
they got to use solar power, so they have to charge up during the day, and that's when they're most vulnerable. Well, who knows? There's something to do, though, with the Jawas being this presence, the sandcrawler always behind them, right? Like a slow chase. Star Wars has never done a slow chase,
No, I guess it has. Well, unless you count these
Last
scooters,
Jedi.
The scooters in Book of Boba Fett.
Well, no, and all of
really
The Last
slow.
Jedi. They're running out of
it.
gas. We could go in front of them, but let's just stay back here,
Dunkirk in space. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the point about Tatooine is good too, because I mean, the Jawas creeped me out. Were we supposed to say sand people anymore? The Tusken Raiders creeped me out, right? Like, it was like the world itself felt scary. I think it's a good. I mean, I think we've gone to Tatooine a lot, but like, I think that as a template for where something can happen in like the vast desert of whatever, I think works really well too. I like the idea of the droids being, going through this land and having to deal with the Jawas as they're trying to pick them for parts.
Yeah.
As they're going across, trying to reach whatever, final destination they're going to, and trying to literally get there intact.
Yeah, there's a what if where it's R2D2 and C3PO, but
yeah,
go ahead.
Yeah, you could do that.
Well,
too.
That's how you build the pitch, I think, most easily, and then you switch it. For
Mandalorian.
Yeah.
Boba Fett and IG-88.
Yeah. That would. I think Boba Fett's a natural fit for horror vibes. Obviously, there was some of that in the Book of Boba Fett. We didn't even talk about the Rancor in Return of the Jedi.
Briefly mentioned,
Rancor something. Yeah. Dathomir is another great planet for horror. Fallen Order has some good Dathomir stuff with like a crashed Jedi starfighter and a Jedi who went insane. And
I think if Star Wars, if they were actually going to put money into it, I think they would do something with Dathomir, just because it's like it's got the Maul connection. It's already built into a lot of the Clone Wars mythology. I mean, there's zombies, there's mysticism and magic and like dark evil forces that go into it. I just feel like that would be if they were going to spend an actual Disney amount of money on something, they'd be like, we've already got most of this world fleshed out. Let's just do something terrifying on Dathomir. And people already know what it is too. Like, the casual, even like somewhat casual fans, if it's Fallen Order, if it's, I'm a Maul fan or Clone Wars fan, like it's not too big of a leap for them to say, hey, we're going to set something on Dathomir. You can do a quick Google search and be like, oh, Dathomir.
As soon as you mentioned the Night Sisters earlier in the episode, BC, I was like, I had to update my notes because that is the best bet. Anything with Dathomir, it's like you could have the POV character, again, not from there, and then they're exposed and being hunted for the ritual or whatever, and then we're learning about the culture and how they make zombies or Darth Mauls, that kind of thing, Savages, etc. And you get to learn the culture through that POV. It's like very almost Texas Chainsaw, or Resident Evil 7, like this crazy cult or this group with this wild belief system, and then they're trying to get you.
Yeah.
That's excellent.
I think it's got that in common with the Womp and the Hoth idea. It's like if you put crash land someone into this world, there is a horror that lurks beneath them, and it's going to unfold the farther they go, from their initial landing point. They're going to figure out more and more about it.
Let me expand. This is Texas Chainsaw because they have one trained kind of Savage Maul style warrior that just does the bidding of the family, and that's your heavy. But then the family itself, so to speak, the mother, the Night Sisters, they're the scariest thing because of the way the culture, like they're just pointing the weapon. That thing isn't even thinking. Like, Leatherface doesn't think what he does. He just does what he's told, right? So you could do that same story. You're just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Instead of teenagers, it's like Jedi in an era of perfect peace. It's like really soft Jedi, like show up like on.
And then you bring your master and your apprentice there. That's great.
Yeah.
Who's gonna live?
Wow,
it's fun to pick which lightsaber color is gonna survive.
Man, I really do want a Dathomir horror thing. I think that's brilliant.
It'd be super fun just to see Dathomir in live action.
It would be very cool.
Give it to us, please.
And it builds out like why Darth Maul was so cool. Like it adds additive to that mythos in a way that's missing and severely lacking, like you're saying.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't think anybody knows much about what the Acolyte series is going to be yet.
Yeah.
But I feel like that's got probably the most potential to play on some of the horror tropes that we've been discussing. It's like if Andor is the political thriller sort of spy thriller thing that they're doing, is Acolyte going to lean into that genre heavy sort of like, hey, we're dealing with the dark side. We're gonna play on genre heavily in terms of horror vibes that we're going for with this Acolyte series. I hope so. Like I really hope that's the case because I think the more that they can do genre in Star Wars and spin it out. I mean, I think it's one of the things that I like most about like Marvel movies, which I haven't spent a lot of time with recently, but at a certain point they're like, hey, this is a playground for us to do genre. We've got all of these amazing characters. We've got a bunch of fantastic genres. Like, let's start using the IP that Disney now has and play with these things in this massive sandbox, as opposed to being like, we're going to be so straight down the line with Star Wars. It's going to be, right down the middle. It's like Andor was great because it's like, hey, this isn't your typical Star Wars. Like, this is something else. It's like, it was so fresh in terms of what we're used to in terms of Star Wars content. I think if Acolyte can do that, then they're going to see like, oh, we can keep going in this direction. We don't have to like be, such tight butthole about our next movie's got to be perfect or Star Wars is going to be dead forever. It's like, no, you've got the biggest playground in the world. Like, do all of it. Like, some of it's going to be shit. Like Book of Boba Fett and Obi-Wan Kenobi, two of the biggest characters. They're like, we'll just play it safe. And they sucked. Like, they weren't very good. I mean, there's enjoyable moments, but it wasn't like quality stuff. When you look at what they did with Andor, you're like, oh, this is the template for how we can do this.
The character forward. Nobody cared about.
No, like, yeah, when they did like, here's everything that's coming out, you're like, Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, Cassian Andor, like, who cares? Turns out it was the best thing they did out of all of them. So
100%,
because they leaned into the genre of it,
I think there's gonna be some horror in this. What's his face and his group of children show coming out.
Oh yeah, God, what is this?
Oh jeez,
what is this called?
I might not even know about this.
The book of Jude Law.
Yeah, Jude Law and his
the skeleton skeleton crew. Yeah,
Jude Law and a bunch of children on like abandoned children on a spaceship or something. Anyway, maybe it'll be great.
I have no idea what that is, but
could be.
Yeah, I'll touch on the idea of genre that BC was saying though, because I was thinking our parents or like the older generation, right? like they grew up with Roy Rogers and stuff, and it was like Western. Western is just a thing, and we put everything in the Western.
Yeah.
You know, we'll do romance stories, we'll do crime stories, we'll do all this and that, morality tales, but it's like everything happens in Western, quote unquote, right? This is the setting of the West.
Yes.
And like we grew up with Star Wars, so now just you have a universe, put everything in the setting in the universe of Star Wars, and we'll eat it up. Like that's our the West, basically. Like,
Mandalorian did a pretty good job of playing with that to a degree, and there's the Spider episode of Mandalorian
that to me did read as horror just because Spider spooked me out, and I do not like watching that episode just because it gives me the
that is a give you the willies type episode for sure. If it's not straight horror, it is in the willies zone. But yeah, I want to see more of it. And I especially would love a Star Wars horror like feature film. Like more than I want a series, I would like just a one-off Star Wars horror movie would be awesome. That would be
really to do
satisfying.
A movie.
I want the power lifter versus alien queen scene, but just as well executed in the Star Wars version. Whatever that
so a battle droid versus a Rancor?
Yeah.
A big battle droid versus a Rancor on Tatooine?
Amazing.
Yeah. There's definitely stuff Disney would never touch. 2 pitches are a regular Tuscan village that's saved a woman from the desert. Then here comes a guy on a motorcycle to kill them all. Also, Order 66, you're just going to Jedi school, and all of a sudden, here comes Anakin. Those are scary from that POV.
Yeah, not bad. And I think there's a graphic novel out there or a comic about stormtroopers and Ewoks, and the perspective of being terrified of the Ewoks, like that fan film. I think that exists out there somewhere.
There's an Order 66, just with the troopers probably that works, where it's like, oh geez, I'm like slightly inexperienced, and now my troops have turned on me. It's like a reverse Rambo. Like you have to survive while they're all hunting you down.
Yeah, that could be cool. It's hard to make a Jedi a protagonist in a horror though, because they're so empowered.
There's definitely needs to be a power imbalance between the protagonist and the antagonist in horror movies. That's what makes it scary. So leaning out of that, but
I like the Master and the Padawan, but it's like the young Padawan with their first field experience, and they do like we crash landed on Dathomir. The Master dies fairly quickly, and it's now I have a lightsaber. Or I have
dead master's lightsaber.
Some knowledge of the Force, but like is totally ill prepared to handle anything that they're thrown against, because that's what's going to make it interesting, right? Like you're right. If a Jedi, they're just OP, like killing things in front of them. I mean, it's one of the things that we like about them when they go into the battle. They're super heroic. They'll jump into anything. They don't have fear. It's like no, they should have seeing a Jedi with a healthy amount of fear in a situation is like. Oh, that might be why they would turn to the dark side. Like if it's like, the fear that a young Jedi is experiencing, like starts allowing them to use dark side powers that they had previously, like, you haven't been able to access any of this before, but because you are so afraid, like all of a sudden, like force lightning's coming out of your hand and it's not grab Chewbacca out of the sky and pretend to kill him.
Yep.
It's like a genuinely like shocking reaction to a moment of fear where it's like, oh, I'm about to be killed. Force lightning comes out of my hands and I've slaughtered like 100 things in front of me. I think that would be
a test.
Kind of a fun thing to
this is the Midsummer test in the Jedi Temple movie where they take the children and they put them into a terrifying situation where their master's death is faked and they're alone in the.
They're like, man. Remember, no fear.
If you go to the dark side, you will be expelled from the order and maybe murdered.
By expelled we mean murdered. We just say that we're sending them home and nobody knows. But what's the most primal fear is the fear of the unknown. So just putting a character in a situation and where what is this corner of the universe and exploring that, something that nobody has seen. Again, like a Dathomir, we've seen it, but the unknown, that's where you should go with Star Wars. That or a hostile, man versus nature, Wampas. I think that's the most utilitarian, not to be long-winded, but I think we're here, Dathomir. That's the best way to use it because it ties in, it makes the universe larger, and it's the perfect setting. I don't think we're going to come up with a better idea than Dathomir.
Well,
spooky.
You heard it here, folks. When that happens, Disney owes us money. But
yep, that's a law. That's a law.
Any
Dathomir
final thoughts
Saber
on
Massacre.
This, before we move on, trying to be a better timekeeper here in the new year. I have one thing I'd like to do after this, but yeah. What's up, Mike?
No, just I was saying, Fear of the Unknown. There is the what's the outer? It's like the beyond known space, right?
That's yes, like the Chiss. I should have mentioned. There's a
bunch of crazy
in
stuff
the
out
expanded
there.
Universe where the Yuzong Vong or whatever come and basically this all ties into the reason Thrawn is here is because there's a greater threat to the universe as a whole. And so Thrawn is here to basically be an ally and learn from the Empire because the Empire might be needed to fight this greater threat. And that's why he sides with the Empire is because they're the strongest, force. They have a military.
Right.
So yeah, an outside threat for sure. Like that's something good too.
Yeah, there's a creature known as Aboleth. Or do you guys know who that is? Abeloth, yeah, that's like a spooky lady who communes with the darkness and becomes like an evil demigod, almost like Lovecraftian, extremely powerful being. But that's like a whole nother thing. But there is like the outer realms or whatever, where there's spooky stuff lurking that we haven't even heard about. So you could invent something too. But I believe they would want to build up the universe. But yeah, cosmic horror is out there.
Well, I think a little bit of that cosmic horror is part of what's happening in High Republic right now, where people's souls are sucked out and they literally turn to dust or whatever by something that's happening in the universe. So yeah, I think
draining of force powers happens. Yeah, but I still think we're out here with Dathomir being the best bet. So.
Yeah, I'm down to ride for a Dathomir horror flick for sure. But before you guys go, because I'm gonna stick around after y'all are gone and continue talking to the fans.
Sure. Yeah. Well, you usually do. Yeah.
But before we end the podcast, I did want to ask you, kind of a classic question. Used to ask all the time. Say you're in a Star Wars zombie apocalypse. All right. This is a scenario. There's hordes of evil enemies, in a horror situation. You got 2 weapons and you got 2 pieces of pretty common Star Wars tech. You can't be like, I also have a Death Star or whatever. But you get 2 weapons. I'll go ahead and say I'm going to have a lightsaber.
Lightsabers all around. Round of lightsabers for everybody.
It seems like that's the most logical choice. Even in a zombie outbreak, they say a katana. Any sword. You don't have to reload it. Even a machete is the best. It has no ammo.
I'd take a hammer in the real world, a big sledgehammer.
Turn the lightsaber on and spin in a circle. You're gonna hit something.
You put it on a rotating stick that's automated, and you sleep underneath it. It'll protect you all night. It's just spinning above you.
You're good.
Yeah.
So
definitely,
I'm taking a lightsaber. I'm probably just gonna take a DL-44 blaster pistol too. I'm not gonna take any chances there, but gotta have. I want a rebreather. I want one of those little I can swim underwater, no problems. Tempted to go for macro binoculars just because they're so rad. But what I actually want is I want one of those cooking pots that cooks what seem to be the universal powder foods that make the little Aunt Beru noise.
1/4 portions?
Yeah. I want a portion cooker. Can't forget about sustenance.
No, you definitely need that. That's great. VC, what's your picks? I gotta think about it anymore.
Yeah, so lightsaber, obviously, a standard blaster of any kind. I'm not going to be picky about that.
You would go laser, not projectile weapon, though, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I was thinking, in a pinch, it might be nice to have a thermal detonator, but that's you use it once and then it's done.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go blaster for my range, lightsaber when things get hairy and up close, and I'm gonna use the spin method as described previously to protect myself. It might be kind of handy to have. I don't know if this falls under your Death Star category. I think this is a little closer, but like a Mandalorian jetpack would be nice.
Yeah,
so you can get a little airborne.
Yeah.
Right. Mm-hmm. So I can get off the ground. Obviously, you can't fly forever, but you can get yourself out of enough danger, move over to a little bit more safety. And I do like the little breathy too. So you can go air and you can go sea.
I think the Gungans are pretty safe against the zombie invasion. I bet that's a pretty safe place to go.
Yeah. Could be, except can fish just swim through those energy shields too?
They just choose not to?
Yeah, I don't know. It could be.
I don't know, but could be. Yeah, the rebreather is a good pick. So are binoculars and jetpack are good because you can at least scan the horizon or get a vantage or get the heck out of there. It's a good escape. But definitely, I think I have to agree, blaster, lightsaber, right? But alternatively, you could have just an Ewok bow and arrow because I don't know how long charge lasts for blasters. Do you have to recharge them?
The energy cells degrade over time?
Yeah, so having something that you could fashion your own projectiles for might be useful. So I'll go with an analog bow and arrow just because it has, infinite ammo potential, depending on how long this is going to last. And lightsaber should be fine as long as I put it on the ceiling fan.
Now, lightsabers in Shatterpoint do have a charge. So I don't know if that's still canon or not, but they do eventually run out of charge. It takes a long, long time.
Right. I would still pick a lightsaber. But tech, though, to not repeat, rebreather's great. And I'm not allowed to have a speeder because that's too big.
You could have a probe droid, out surveying. And by that I mean a droid that can't talk to you, right? It's got to be very simple. Maybe one of those Darth Maul balls.
Give me either the one that hangs out with Jedi Fallen Order or that little one-wheel guy from Rise of Star Wars. I think he can hang out with me.
Dio. Yeah.
Yeah, Dio, like a little guy. I'd like a little companion.
Some friendship. That's an angle most people don't think about because it is going to be a lonely surviving. You need to have someone you can, have a chat with, responds,
response, kiss sometimes.
Yeah,
cuddle up with at night. Big spoon, little spoon, whatever.
They could stay up and alert you when there's danger too.
Yeah,
it's useful.
Yeah.
I want a little buddy. Yeah, I think that's the best thing. Give me a rebreather and a little buddy, I guess.
Well, very good. I think we're all surviving the Star Wars zombie apocalypse. But that's kind of it as far as we've got in the cargo bay for Star Wars horror this time. I don't know, BC, am I missing anything before we do plugs and get out of here?
I think we've covered literally everything.
Awesome. As we usually do here in the cargo bay.
We never leave anything on the table. We nail it every time.
Can you tell us where to find Normies Like Us, Mike, and anything else you want to plug?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can check us out at normieslikeus.com. We're on Apple Podcasts and anywhere else you get your podcasts, Google Play Store, or we do have our video episodes up on YouTube. Audio goes up first, video goes up second, so pick your poison. And we'll be rolling into more Star Trek coverage this coming week. We're going to be doing Generations. We've finished all of the original era movies, and we're passing the torch to Jean-Luc. We're going to make it so. But
exciting.
Staying in space. So stay tuned for that. And thanks for having me on, guys. This has been awesome.
Thanks for being here. And we'll definitely have you back on sometime if you'll permit it. Guys, check out Normies Like Us. You can listen to our Prison Arc Andor episode, which has Jacob from Normies Like Us. Maybe a little bit of a tease here. Colin will be coming on soon to talk about the Star Wars audio dramas. I'm really excited about that.
Mm-hmm.
So great stuff over at Normies Like Us.
We forgot to plug during holiday season. We all did the holiday special. Speaking of the horror of Star Wars, truly one of the most horrific things we've ever been through, and we did it together. We're bonded now for life.
We did do that. It is probably the most horrific thing, just in terms of lack of planning and preparation that went into it. Truly astonishing.
Yeah.
I would love to see
from that episode.
I would love to see the like rated R horror version of the Star Wars holiday special. Although it would probably be rated R for reasons other than gore and viscera.
No, but use the costume of freaking Grandpa, man. That's horrifying.
Yeah,
even lumpy.
I may just
throw some more close-ups of that in there. It's like, all right. I'm terrified.
Wait, is Grandpa itchy or is he scratchy or is
itchy?
he lumpy?
Lumpy is the kid.
Lumpy's the child.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I might make Itchy
Itchy and
the cover of this.
I think we've done it in the 11th hour. Oh man, Itchy's made it one of the scariest things in all of Star Wars. Yes.
I mean, you wouldn't have to alter that costume to have a hit on.
Probably looks even better now.
It's probably too appropriate.
Yeah, have you seen those like degraded Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle costumes that are out
they're
there?
terrifying.
This is it. We stumbled on the final and best idea, which is that we do a horror movie that is just old Star Wars props degrading coming to life.
Yeah.
Five Nights in Tatooine.
Yes.
Oh boy. Yeah, and the Yoda the Yoda puppet is apparently off. They reconstructed that a little bit for episode 8, right? Okay.
Yeah,
so
they did
Monster
Palooza in Pasadena had that repaired one on display. You had to be very far away from it, but I was able to see that one, and it was like, oh wow! And even the sculpts of like them. Anyway, neither here nor there. But that was a spooky Monster Palooza, and Yoda was there, so count it. Yeah,
I count it. Anyway, it's been fun talking Star Wars horror, everybody. Please come back and listen to us again. Thanks for listening to this episode. I guess until next time, bye forever.
Go snoke yourselves.